Hey, let me tell you a story. The call came in at 3 a.m. Third one this week. Same neighborhood. Same panic in the dispatcher's voice. Another body, another mess. I got there before sunrise. Parked by the curb. Waited for the uniforms to wave me in. No flashing lights. Just one cruiser. Quiet, discreet. Always is when the victim has money. The front door was already open. The sergeant nodded like he knew me, which he did. They all do. I've cleaned for the city longer than most of them have carried a badge. They trust me. They shouldn't. The scene was surgical, clean lines, no blood spatter, no signs of forced entry. Victim was a male, early 50s, laid out flat in his office chair, eyes closed, hands folded, like he was asleep. But the throat was missing, not cut, not slashed, removed, and not a drop of blood outside the wound. I looked around the room, wood floors polished, books dusted, coffee still warm. Whoever did this worked fast and clean. That's what got me. They asked me what I thought. I shrugged, said the same thing I always do. Too early to say. Need to let the lab boys run their tests. But I already knew they'd find nothing. No prints, no fibers, no DNA, not even dust on the windowsill. It looked like it hadn't been lived in. And that's the part that always bothers me. Murder is messy. Even the best of them leave something behind. But this was different. I finished my part before sunrise, loaded my gear, signed the report, left without saying much. Didn't need to. The sergeant was already shaking his head. He'd seen enough crime scenes to know this one wasn't right, but he wouldn't say it out loud. Not yet. Nobody wants to admit they're hunting a ghost. Back in my van, I made a note. Time, address, temperature in the room, positions of items on the desk. Small things, tiny shifts in alignment, a crooked coaster, a chair not fully pushed in. Details others ignore, but not me. I see them all. I remember them all. Patterns speak, if you know. The language, this wasn't random. It wasn't rage. It was design. And design has intention. Somebody meant for it to be seen like this, posed like a message, not to the victim, not to the police, to someone else. Someone who would notice the cleanliness, the silence, the restraint. But here's what really got me. Under the desk, barely visible to anyone not looking, a single hair, placed it perfectly, to deliberate, blonde, maybe synthetic, maybe not, but it wasn't left by accident. No way. It was a signature. I didn't tell the sergeant, didn't log it, just pocketed it and moved on. Some things don't belong in reports. Some stains don't come out, no matter how hard you scrub. 2 days later, another call, this time a condo downtown. High rise, top floor, woman in her 40s, known in the scene, art dealer, influencer type. Vegan cookbooks and cocaine in the same kitchen. I parked underground, badge on the dash, waved. Through like always. The doorman looked shaken, said he didn't hear anything, didn't see anything. Security cameras were off for maintenance. As usual, the detectives were already inside, gloves on, walking in circles, looking for something that wasn't there. I waited for the nod, stepped in. Same feeling as before, cold room. No dust, no smell, no sign of struggle. Body was in the bathtub, fully clothed, shoes polished, arms crossed, eyes open, pupils blown wide, like they'd seen something they shouldn't, like they never looked away. No blood, no bruising, no water in her lungs, but her mouth was filled with black thread, tightly packed, perfectly aligned, her teeth clenched around it like she tried to scream and someone silenced her with stitching. I asked if they found the source of the thread. They didn't. I already knew they wouldn't. It wasn't store-bought. It was industrial. something used in medical closures, not available in stores, not legally, and definitely not something an average killer would carry. While the others talked theories, I looked at the floor tiles, each one scrubbed, polished, the grout were sealed, not just cleaned, restored. Too much care, too much effort. That's the signature, not the violence, the after, the polish. I asked, who called it in? They said the neighbor heard the dog barking all night. Funny thing is, there was no dog in the apartment. There never had been, and no one questioned that detail. Later, in my van, I logged another page, added a thread to the list. Same type one found 6 months ago in another scene. That one had been ruled accidental. Man fell on a fence. But I remembered the stitch work. 6 tight loops behind the ear. Like someone practicing something private. Something sacred. That's when I started to see it. The pattern. A rhythm. Not just of death, but of message. Of precision. These weren't outbursts. They were statements. Placed like punctuation in a sentence nobody else was reading. And I wasn't supposed to read it either. But I couldn't help myself. The scene spoke to me. Not loudly, just enough, like a whisper from behind a locked door. One I didn't remember opening. When I told the lead detective that the killer might be someone with access, someone with training, someone who knows how to clean, he nodded, took a note, never looked up. The third call came before I finished breakfast. This one was different, not because of the location or the victim, but because of what wasn't said on the radio. There was no urgency, no code red, just coordinates and a name, like someone already knew I was listening. The address led me to an industrial unit on the edge of the city, not abandoned, but forgotten. Broken lights, faded paint, the kind of place where nobody asks questions. Inside, the air was stale, metallic, the kind of stillness that comes after something has been cleaned too well. The body was strapped to a chair, facing the wall, entire torso opened, ribs spread, heart gone, not torn out. Removed, placed carefully on a stainless tray beside the sink. It looked preserved, waxy, untouched by the rest of the violence. The floor was spotless, drains flushed, tools organized in perfect symmetry, as if someone had cleaned after an operation, not a murder. The detectives were late this time, just one patrol car out front. No media, no tape. The responding officer barely spoke to me, just pointed me toward the back, like he didn't want to see it again. I walked through it slowly, not because I had to, but because I needed to. Every object was familiar, not just in function, in placement, the way the light hit the tray, the corner where the gloves were folded, the distance between the stool and the wall. It was a mirror of something I knew too well. I reached into my case, pulled out the camera, not the one for official use, the other one, smaller, no serial, and I started documenting for myself. Angles only I would understand, measurements I never submitted. This wasn't just a murder, it was communication. I was being shown something, a copy, a replica, a challenge, not to the police, but to me. Later, while cleaning around the chair, I noticed something no one else had, a strip of blue tape, barely visible, stuck under the edge of the sink. I peeled it off with tweezers, unrolled it slowly, written in perfect block letters. One sentence, 7 words, not typed, not printed, handwritten, with purpose. It said, "You are not the only one cleaning." I didn't tell anyone, didn't log it, just stared at it until my hands stopped shaking, then burned it with the rest of the contaminated material. Some messages aren't meant to be archived, they're meant to be heard. Once, then erased. The fourth scene wasn't called in. No officers, no dispatch, no protocol. I let myself in with the key I already had, walked down the hall like I'd done 100 times. But this time I wasn't cleaning for someone else. This one was mine. The man inside had been waiting, tied to a wooden chair, old rope. Nothing fancy, his face swollen, but still recognizable. I followed him for weeks, watched him lie, watched him cheat, watched him hit the girl he said he loved. I didn't need a motive, I only needed a reason, and he gave me plenty. I used gloves, not because I feared prints, but because it's cleaner. I took my time, not because I enjoyed it, but because there's a rhythm to this, a process, each action deliberate, each cut with purpose. When it was done, I washed my tools, bleached the floors, bagged the waste, the same way I've done on every other job. The difference is, this time, the job came before the cleanup. For years, I worked behind the scenes, cleaning after others, learning what they missed, how they got caught, what gave them away. I memorized every mistake, every overlooked fiber, every careless footprint, until I understood what it meant to leave nothing behind. And then, I started doing it myself, just once, then twice, then again, always someone who deserved it, someone the system couldn't touch. But the truth is, it was never about justice, not really. It was about control, about balance, about silence. I never felt rage. I never felt guilt. I felt clarity. Some people drink, some pray, some go to therapy. I clean. I remove what doesn't belong, what contaminates, what stains. I don't leave evidence, because I know what evidence looks like. I don't trigger alarms, because I know how they're wired. And I don't feel anything, because feelings get in the way. The police are still looking, still guessing, still chasing shadows. They think he's a phantom, a ghost, something inhuman. Maybe that's not wrong. Maybe I became something else. Maybe I always was. I'll keep working as long as there's work to do. And in this city, the filth never ends. The streets are full of it. Offices, clubs, bedrooms, schools. The world is one big contaminated scene. And someone has to keep it clean. Someone has to sweep the corners, rinse the blood, fold the towels, silence the screaming. Someone has to care enough to make it spotless. So, if you're listening, if you're wondering if this story has an ending, it doesn't, not yet. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. I'll be here, keeping things tidy.